submitting your paperwork. So we're going to start with a check-in question. I don't know if Felicity's been doing check-in questions, but she had it on the agenda. And we're just going to go around the circle. I will pick someone and then just share your name, the farm you're at. And the question is, what is something that made you smile this week? So I would say I'm Stephanie Blumhagen. I'm in Botno. I'm the ED of FARRMS. And a friend gave me a chicken from a local farm, and I roasted it and just made a really delicious chicken soup. So that made me smile. I was very happy. And I'm going to pass it over to Samira.
Okay, and we introduce ourselves as well?
I mean, you will probably know each other, but it doesn't hurt.
Well, I'm Samira Sanchez. Hi. One thing that made me happy today was I was at school and I wasn't having the best day. And my teacher, she gave me this bag of just a bunch of beaded jewelry that she was just saving in her office, and she was cleaning it out. And that made me super happy because all that is like just free money she just gave me. And me and my family love beaded jewelry. So
wonderful. Who would you like to pass it to?
Kristen? Maybe.
Hi, I'm Kristen. Something that made me smile this week is I got baby chicks for the first time. I've been wanting them for like 10 years. I live in the city of Moorhead, and they finally allow backyard chickens. And so they just turned 1 week old yesterday, and I brought them outside for the first time just to hang out in the grass for a few minutes. But they make me smile constantly. They change every day, and it's been so fun to have them.
Wonderful. And pass it along to someone else.
Bella. Isabella, maybe?
Okay. Something that made me smile today. While working, I got to see a 13 stripe, and it was really close to me on the straw bale, and I was so happy to see that, especially up close. That's it. Let me. I'm not to anybody in the Zoom. Forrest.
Hi, I'm Forrest. I'm at Beagle Hill Organic Farm in Minot, and something that's made me smile the past couple days. The weather has just been really tolerable compared to that really hot week we had about a week ago. So it's been fun to work outside. Today was a little bit warmer, but can't complain about the past couple days. Got a lot done, and the weather was awesome. So.
Great.
I'll pass to who hasn't gone yet.
Risto and Risto, yeah. Risto.
Hi, I'm Risto, and I'm at Stable Days Youth Ranch in East Grand Forks, Minnesota. And something that made me smile today was this morning my aunt was doing some work with kids out in the garden. And one of the kids was asking about the river ponics raft that I've been building, and it was just funny seeing the looks that he was making as he was being told about the project.
Very fun. Let's pass it over to Shelby.
Hello, I'm Shelby. I am the communications coordinator for FARRMS, if you missed that. Something that has made me smile today is that my sister just called me a little bit ago, and she got into her veterinary technician program. So that was really exciting to hear.
Congratulations to her. Toby.
I heard what made me happy this week, so that's what I'm gonna do. It's not really like farm related, but I went to the zoo and I haven't been to the zoo in like 2 years, and there's a lot of like newer animals that I haven't seen in a long time. So that made me happy.
Which was your favorite?
I like seeing the penguins because I haven't seen the penguins there for longer than 2 years. So
Yeah. And we will, I believe, Glenn, you're the last one.
Oh, okay. Every morning I open the brooder house and see all my baby chicks, and that's a happy sign. So I have the meat chicks, but then I got 20 of a laying variety. And I didn't lose, you always lose a few, but I did not lose any of the laying variety, and I've had them about a month. It's one of the barred something varieties. I thought I was getting a red variety, but they're black, but oh well, mix-ups happen. But it's nice to see them, and they seem pretty happy, and I got to move them to this week to the calf barn, and they'll stay inside a day, and then I'll open the door and let them roam and try and teach two dogs that they can't eat them. So
Wonderful. Well, this week our topic is organic certification and organic production. We have some information that I'll share. I have a few slides and some resources to discuss with you all. And then Glenn is going to talk about his experience as a certified organic local food producer. And then we'll have some time for questions towards the end, and we have some housekeeping before we finish up at 7 about time cards, experience reports, and learning plans. So I have got a video. That's a very short video clip that we're going to start with. And okay, are you seeing a screen with a YouTube video with biochar on it?
nope.
It says Zoom.
Let's try that again.
When we're speaking of
Is that better?
It says when we're speaking of organic.
Yep. So this is Derek Lowstutter. This is from a webinar we did a few years ago. And he's talking about the different definitions of organic.
when we're speaking of organic, there's a few different things that can mean. You know, on the most basic level, and kind of where the other definition stemmed from was organic chemistry. So it's carbon-based compounds, and organic matter is basically something that was previously living or currently living and producing carbon byproducts through exudates or excrement. And then there's the organic as a small o, not capitalized organic, which is the natural systems approach to crop production. And then on top of that, kind of what a lot of people consider organic to be is this big O, you know, capitalized organic package of practices that are approved by USDA.
So he described three different definitions of organic. The one you maybe learned in high school science class, where we have, you know, organic chemistry, organic matter. You know, we are organic. We are, you know, carbon based. And then there's the sort of general organic that is sometimes used to just refer to food that people think is, you know, just produced in a more natural way. But then what we're focusing on today is the third, which is the big O organic, in which a farmer goes through a certification process to demonstrate to the USDA and to the certifying agencies that they are using a package of practices, and then get a certificate that and have a label that they can use in marketing their products. So what is that? That label is the USDA organic seal. And so this is an infographic that's really meant for consumers. If your food has this organic seal, you can trust that your food was produced using allowed ingredients. Natural substances are generally allowed and synthetic substances are generally prohibited. It was produced without excluded methods, and one of those excluded methods is genetic engineering. USDA certified organic farms use physical, mechanical, and biological farming methods. These are methods that support biodiversity and soil health, and only limited amounts of USDA approved pesticides, rigorously vetted by a variety of agencies and the public, and they're known to not harm human or environmental health. And explanation of organic labels. There's 100% organic. That is, they can use the USDA organic seal. There is organic, which means 95% certified organic ingredients. Now, these are labels used not only by farmers, but maybe by value-added, processed products that use organic ingredients. And of course, organic livestock growers too. You can say a product, maybe a baked good or a jam or something, is made with organic ingredients if it has at least 70% certified organic ingredients, but you cannot use the seal. And if it has some organic ingredients, but not at least 70%, and doesn't comply in other ways, you cannot use that seal as well or call it organic. So one thing I wanted to share with you, how did we get to this point? How long has the organic certification program been in existence, and what did we do before that? And there's this guide that the USDA produces for organic producers, and it's got a really, what I found interesting, a history. So back prior to the 1920s, even though there was no such thing as organic certified labeling, but people were still using sustainable practices, and they called themselves humus farmers. It was called the humus farming movement because they were focusing on feeding the soil and building soil fertility. I suppose a hummus farmer would be something entirely different, chickpea spread. So it was typified by mixed farms that include livestock, food crops, feed crops, and green manures. Are you familiar with the term green manure? It's when like a cover crop is grown and then plowed back into the soil to fertilize the soil. The movement grew through the 1920s through the 1950s. And then the 60s and 70s brought more visibility to organic farming. Consumers were more concerned about where their food came from. They didn't want pesticides used on their food. And so this resulted in the growth of the organic industry, which led to the establishment of some standards and third-party certification, which is an assessment process carried out to verify compliance with the standards. As the industry expanded during the 1980s, different certifiers developed their own standards and certification processes. But as a result, there was some confusion because one certifier wouldn't accept another certifier's standards, and there were disparities between the different certifiers. So in 1990, not that long ago, Congress passed the Organic Foods Production Act. This created the National Organic Program, which is part of the USDA, and there's something called the National Organic Standards Board. So that is how today's organic certification programs through the USDA came to be. And currently, the USDA is putting additional funding and resources towards helping farmers and ranchers transition to certified organic production. And so FARRMS is the recipient of some grant funds to help provide education for farmers who want to transition. One example is that I'm working with Forest host farmer Paul Lepp on organic certification. And we will be hosting a webinar in the fall on organic, intro to organic certification for farmers. So what is the definition of organic? Is it just no pesticides? No, it goes beyond that. So the USDA's definition is organic production is a production system that responds to site-specific conditions by integrating cultural, biological, and mechanical practices that foster cycling of resources, promote ecological balance, and conserve biological diversity. So for a crop grower, that includes things like soil fertility, the use of the seeds and planting stock that they're using, crop rotation, management of pests, weeds, and diseases, and maintaining the identity and integrity of their crops. For a livestock producer, it includes their living conditions and facilities for the livestock, grazing requirements, animal health, organic feed, and where the animals come from, organic origin. And for processors, that means organic ingredients, managing commingling and contact prevention. So not letting, I suppose, not letting contamination occur, and managing pests. So I think we will I'll pause a moment. Are there any questions or points that you weren't sure about that we just covered? That was a quick overview. I'm going to turn it over to Glenn. So you learned like the theory, and now Glenn's going to talk about what this looks like in real life.
Cool. Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Stephanie, for inviting me. My name is Glen Philbrick. I'm at Hiddendale Farm. I'm in a house that's 107 years old, built by my ancestors. It's near Turtle Lake. I guess I've been farming my whole life. I'm also one of the business instructors at Sitting Bull College at Standing Rock, and of course off for the summer. So being a lifelong farmer, I grew up in dairy and also had chickens. So I grew up, we ate our own meat and we grew most of our own vegetables. So today, there's still beef cattle. I have chickens. I raise gardens, and as of 2016, I got some grounds considered certified organic. And as Stephanie mentioned earlier in the slide, there's a program approved by USDA that you work through a certifying agency to do. So here, besides cattle, I grow different plants and vegetables for seed. So I am a contract seed producer. I also have my hands in research, and some of it has been grant funded where I wrote the grant. Some of it is, I am not the PI, but I am a research participant as well. So this year I have the USDA SARE grant. Pardon?
Define PI.
PI is principal investigator. If you are the PI, odds are you are the person who wrote the grant, or you are the person in charge of the whole research project.
Oh, great, thank you.
It's an academic term. So if I sell my product goes to research is research, and I do earn income through research. So I have been a producer for Seed Savers Exchange. I go for them. Southern Exposure Seed Exchange. Row 7, that's associated with Chef Dan Barber. Let's see, who am I forgetting? I'm forgetting somebody. I've grown for Johnny's. I am, why am I forgetting? Nature and Nurture in Michigan too. So what influenced me to get organic certification is, for the most part, in regards to vegetables and flowers, I was already doing it. The area I needed assistance on was sourcing my seed. I didn't have anything that was GMO, but you're supposed to have things that are, in most cases, considered certified organic. And so that wasn't a hard transition there at all. Most of my practices involve tillage. For soil, I have in one field 9% organic matter, another one 5%. So I'm a higher level. That's even before certification. So I do better in most cases there. If I'm lacking anything, it'd be more micronutrients. So if I look at a soil profile, I'm better off than a lot of people are. Part of going organic was part of my values, and also having negative experiences with pesticides. And I can tell you from when I was a teenager, this is a long time ago, a lot of pesticides weren't working a long time ago. So that caused me to look at new ways to deal with weeds. Right now, my biggest 2 challenges are Canada thistle and bindweed. And from a biological standpoint, I have killed Canada thistle by mowing it about that high. So I'd say, oh, that's 8 inches, 6 to 8 inches in there, before I felt it was going to rain. And it's a combination of the injury and the wet. It opens it up to disease, and it died. On a drought year, that's not going to work. But the neighbor's ditch was full of it. It's not anymore, and that was my doings. I had a patch in the pasture too. Grazing influences that as well. Weeds. Let's see, what else can I address here? Challenges. Weeds are a challenge for everybody. So even if I look at a conventional neighbor, they still got weeds. But an organic producer's toolbox are different. So part of it is your crop rotation. It could be weed flaming, and I got a couple different devices for that. Part of my rotation is alfalfa. Alfalfa chokes out a lot of things. Just the challenge I had with the drought starting in 2020 and 2021, I needed to transition a couple fields into alfalfa then, but I'm on my 3rd try with alfalfa because the drought took it out in 2020, grasshoppers 21 and 2022. So, but grasshoppers caused me to be, look at new ways to deal with things, and I got awarded a grant to study how to deal with grasshopper pressure. Anyway, so I'm not really selling locally, though I do graze a few vegetables that some people buy from me, and I let them know that they're organic, and they're like pretty cool with that. One of my conventional neighbors, he's really curious about, oh, what are you doing for research? Tell me about that. So there's some that I've caught the eye in a positive way. I know there's another that they're not fond of that me being organic, but that's not their business. So I guess, where I've had publicity in a local community is when I have field tours, and that's attracted a few people. And so part of that is one of my elderly neighbors, he had no idea that there were so many varieties of different plants, and he was very impressed by that. It's like, well, he's got 5 decades up on me, so I thought maybe would have known that. I guess misconceptions about organic. I'm looking at notes here I should address. There are approved pesticides for example, often it's like a type of like lemon oil, orange oil can be used as a pesticide, and they'll have a label called OMRI. That means it's approved for organic use. Fertilizers that are approved for organic use would not be derived from petroleum. So most like nitrogen is, but there's other sources that are not derived from petroleum. So I guess the misconception is that there are pesticides out there, but they need the OMRI label. Question is if they work. And granted, I can tell you there's plenty of non-organic pesticide, non-organic approved pesticides that don't work either. You know, biggest difficulties, I would have to say, let's see, adhering to organic certification standards. Drought is a challenge for everybody. Weeds are a challenge for everybody. I've had successes in rangeland with rotational grazing and weeds, also improving just the ecosystem of the pasture. I've had success with like absinthe wormwood, just controlling it mechanically. When I look at something that really gets on my nerves, like bindweed or thistle, I start looking at things from a different angle. For example, I have the book When Weeds Talk. It often looks at a soil deficiency. And like for me, it's more of a micronutrient thing. So that's something I'm toying with. However, it's important to look at sick plants out there. So if there's sick thistle out there, that's something you want. And someone's working to put that in the jar. I found sick bindweed, and I'm going to try putting that in the jar. Anyway, the past, going on my 3rd year, grasshoppers have really been a plague. So basically I could watch them take out a crop a day, onions one day, phacelia one day, borage one day, lettuce one day, tomatoes one day. They just move from one to the next. My neighbor he sprayed his beans for them. That lasted 3 days, and he'd spray again. So this was all last summer. I don't know how that penciled out, but what I did notice is that why are they in my wheat, but they don't eat it? Why are they in my renter's soybeans and they're eating it? And this is all very close to each other. In my renter's wheat, they were in it, but they wouldn't eat it. So this was resulted in me getting a grant. So I'm studying like Brix levels in plants and how to increase that, because grasshoppers don't like high sugar. They're the opposite of us. We like sugar. They don't. I think it messes with our digestive system. So when a challenge comes up, I look for an opportunity for research, because this is something I like to do, but also it's helped me in the long run be a better farmer. Granted, there's always things, you know, I cringe when I see bindweed. Anyway, I look at my alfalfa that I do have going, and it's like, oh, no weeds. So part of it, I look at things differently and how to deal with them. So often that requires research or talking to other people. However, I have to say some challenges have resulted in research grants for me, which I think is pretty cool. Let's see, another thing to cover. Specific benefits or advantages observed of being a certified organic farm. Being organic has helped me get some research grants. What else can I say? Market opportunities. Research has paid me well. That's a plus sign. That there's also conventional research out there too. That's been a good market opportunity. Ecological sustainability. I know I have healthy soil. I was planting trees and I can dig down and find lots of earthworms. That's a sign of a healthy ecosystem. If you don't have earthworms, you have to start asking questions. When I go to one of my ponds, there's lots of frogs, and frogs are a sign of a healthy ecosystem. So I got to figure out what the micronutrients or the tweaks are to deal with my bindweed and thistle in places. Let's see. Other advantages. I think I eat healthier than most. I think that's a plus. So I got into initially vegetables, and I did farmers market. I used to sell at the co-op in Bismarck. and it's like, I like growing vegetables. I don't like standing at a farmer's market though. And so that's why I transitioned to seed, though I'm still growing vegetables and things. I love growing things. Long term is I'm transitioning to native Northland prairie wildflowers. Grasshoppers don't seem to like them. And this is a niche market. And from experience, I have more regretted the things I haven't done than the things I've done. And so I thought, I got to do this. I don't got as many planted as I wanted this year, so it might prolong my launch online another year. So be it, I want to do it correctly. But getting into seed, there were some things I need to learn regarding cleaning, and taking on these contracts did help me learn that. So there was an education factor there as well. I think I covered what bullet points Stephanie wanted me to cover for the most part. What questions do you have for me or comments? Or as I tell my students, dirty looks say 1,000 words.
I guess I have a couple if I can. Yeah, so you're pretty early on in this this grant research with the grasshoppers, is that correct?
Correct. I was awarded this SARE grant this year.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, I mean, I've heard of they don't like the higher bricks content too, and I was just wondering, you know, what are some ways you go about raising bricks content? I really know nothing about that, or what are some things you're planning to try? Just a little bit more about that. And then also I heard you mention borage, and I've heard of the crop. I know it's more popular in Europe, but I really know nothing else about it. So just tell us a little bit more about borage and your experience with it. Excited to hear from you.
Okay, first question, with the bricks, to be blunt, if it's a drought year, it doesn't matter if you're organic, conventional, you're up the creek either way. That's just, there's not enough water. The plant is stressed, obvious reasons. Now they're still here. Mother Nature does them in when you get significant rainfall at the right time, which is when they hatch. So it didn't quite happen at the same time, so they're still here. Ways to do it are to, I'm looking at 5 different treatments. One is a particular kind of calcium. One is changing your, I have a lot of nitrogen in my soil. I'm changing the nitrogen potassium ratio. So it's essentially I'm adding more potassium. That's one way. Humic and fulvic acids is another treatment I'm trying. Part of it can be your variety. Some varieties just have more sugar, some don't. There's a chart out there, and I got it on my desktop. It gives bricks, average bricks for a bunch of varieties. There could always be an outlier out there. It's like, well, I think potatoes often are in a lower level than onions, but there's always an exception to the rule. And you could have a variety that just has lower bricks or higher bricks too. I'm trying to think of everything I have in my system that I'm using. Let's see, calcium, the humic fulvic acids, potassium, nitrate ratio. I remember everything here. So I have my list. So I have several different colored flags for this. The calcium is applied liquid. I mean, I mix powder with liquid and spray that. Most of them I spray on except the potassium. So those are some of the things you can do. Doing a soil test beforehand is helpful, so you can know what you got. For example, the one field where I have a lot of these crops I'm testing, that organic matter level is over 10% there. Now, if you look at NDSU's like fertilizer calculator, I think it's over, you get over 8%. Let me think here. Now you get over 5%, and basically you start reducing the amount of nitrogen you have to add. They note that in there. those are some of the things I'm trying, and plus with another plot where you just don't add anything and see what happens. So there's not a one size fits all. Soil profile, variety make a difference. You know, in a drought, it's you know, it is going to matter what you do for the most part. You know, when you think about me is I can irrigate, but I mean the grasshoppers are here anyway, and they're very busy right now. They do let it grow a little bit first. You know, right now my crops aren't high enough to test for bricks. They're a little bigger, and things are germinating late anyway. To remember everything that I got in the shop that I'm applying. I got my printout isn't in the office, but those are some things I do for bricks, or I'm going to try. So I can't say for sure it's going to work, but hey, you know, nothing ventured, nothing gained. With borage, I grew it as a cover crop, grows successfully. I know that in Carrington, Healthy Oil Seeds, Roger Gracias, he operates that. He's a borage oil extractor. So I grew it as a cover crop. You know, pollinators like it. And I grew it when I grew it for the year I grew it for seed. The grasshoppers mowed it down. So it'll grow here. At least, okay, I'm in central North Dakota. It will grow successfully here. You know, I'm very happy with how it grew. So I guess if you're up on Minot, I can't see why you couldn't grow it. On the conventional side, I don't know if this is something that could be sprayed. If I'm going to grow a field of it organically, I guess what I would do is if it transitions out of alfalfa, you could plant borage next year, or if you've had winter rye, then you could plant borage, probably be fairly weed free. That would be my 2 cents. But Roger Gracias in Carrington would probably be a better person to ask about borage. I did it in small plots. I got ballpark 100 row feet right now. When I did seed, I probably had 250 row feet. For right now, it's not for seed. This is just for the research grant. You know, most of my seed contract this year is popcorn and a whole lot of squash. Squash is something, for the most part, the grasshoppers would leave alone. A future grant I'm going to apply for, I'm going to propose. With my bindweed discussion, pardon me for beating bindweed to death. So I purposely planted a bunch of squash into an area I knew I had bindweed. And it's like, so I kept weed whacking it, and then the vines, you know, strung out, and then they coexisted. So I took the squash off, and in the next spring, I cultivated that all under and planted oats. There is very little bindweed there. Cultivation and bindweed, I mean, it usually makes it worse. So there's something weird going on there. And I found one article in existence regarding squash and cultivation and a decrease in the presence of bindweed. So something's going on there, big time. Because it's like, okay, I can find a plant here and there, not just solid, because that's what it was. Did I answer all your questions?
Yes, you did. Thank you. Thank you. And so with the borage, you just use that as a cover crop. You weren't trying to sell that into the commodity.
Actually, if initially it was a cover crop, that I grew it for the first time in 2019. In 2020, I grew it for a contract, and 2021 I grew it for contract, and they wiped me out, or the grasshoppers took me out. That was a crop I was looking forward to harvesting. But anyway.
I think some farmers grow it for seed to be pressed for borage oil.
Yes. Yep.
And grown in gardens, the flowers are edible. Some people use them for decorations or candy them. Supposedly the leaves are edible and taste like cucumbers, but they're so fuzzy. I can't imagine eating them. It'd be like eating a kiwi skin.
I didn't try that. Grasshoppers loved them. I mean, they took right down the ground. So anyway.
Any other questions about organic certification or just organic production in general?
One comment I'd like to make is that there's a list of prohibited substances. So if I were to apply a prohibited substances to a piece of ground, it's 3 years until that ground could be certified. So it's something you consider. That's a big deal in transitioning. And so, you know, something to consider if someone's going to transition a piece of ground is, okay, let's deal with weeds now. Let's get the alfalfa in there. Alfalfa usually wins out above all. It's like, what's funny is, you know, in a field of alfalfa, I can like draw a line. It's like alfalfa, weeds. It's like chop right there. So I mean, you know, a weed is something undesirable. So many of you, you know, if you don't want alfalfa, well, it's a weed, but it's a great green manure, great cover crop. But it also helps people. It's a good crop to use to choke out weeds. So a study that took place here that I was not the PI for, I was a research participant, but my farm was one of 2 places in the state for the site. We had 12 plots over 4 years to deal with bindweed and Canada thistle. And alfalfa was the control variable. And you have that alfalfa in there and it's like, there's no weeds. And then the last year, for both sites, everything had to be wheat. So just plow everything up. And alfalfa, you have to kind of work it twice, maybe 3 times to take it out. And I missed the spot. It's still there, which is fine. And the wheat did pretty good in those spots. So there's something to it. So FYI, if you've been on that route, you have an option. If you have a small plot garden, that's something you can broadcast. You have to do some serious rototilling to take it out when the time comes. But you know, that's so be organic. Your toolbox is different. What do you call it? Cucumber beetles. My mom, when I was a kid, would use 7 dust. I remember using that. So that was a prohibited substance. However, diatomaceous earth kills bugs. You know, basically, if you see them on there, sprinkle, 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 it does them in. So you have options that are organic and safe because we could eat diatomaceous earth. We can. I suggest not eating 7. However, keep in mind how many generations of insects are born a year, and they become immune to whatever it is. I knew people used porons on livestock for parasites. A lot of them, they just don't work because the bugs are immune to it. So it's like, well, why use it if it isn't going to work? It's like for my milk cows, I have a mixture of orange oil, lemon oil, mineral oil, vinegar, a little bit of dish soap, eucalyptus. I'm forgetting a couple clove oil, and I mix all that all together and I spray that on their back, and it keeps the flies away. So I tell the cows it makes you smell nice, which they don't. They look at me. If I come out there with that little sprayer, they're gone. They do not want anything to do with me. But anyway, they're in the stanchion, they can't do anything about it. So, but it works. That's what's nice. It does work.
I have one more about your livestock. You said dairy and some beef cows. Is that right?
I got 3 milk cows that are for me.
Okay.
Because I like to eat well, and I like my cream and my ice cream and stuff. They're not fresh right now. Got 2 bagging up. That's pretty soon. I've got a group in the dairy. This farm used to be a full-fledged dairy. So yeah, ice cream is very much a part of my diet. But then there's the beef cattle. So
and with your beef cattle, I mean, are those considered organic too, or?
Nope. I didn't do the certification for the cattle.
Yeah, I was just wondering about the livestock aspect of it because you always hear about it with the crop side of things, but
yeah,
I don't know much about like the organic certification for livestock and how all that works. So
that's a different set of paperwork that I've never looked into. So I guess I have some direct to consumer sales with processed beef that I have done at a processor, and then the rest are in a sales ring. So if I do organic, it was something would probably have to arrange by contract with a processor or buyer.
Right.
1,000 heels could be an option, but I would need a certain number. Granted, I'm a long ways away from the market, so I haven't pursued that yet. But that's another set of paperwork that I wasn't ready for. So I cannot call my beef certified organic. Because I know look at the origin of the cows, the feed, and granted, when they're grazing my pasture, one of my pastures is certified organic. That's pretty easy. But then your hay needs to be from certified organic source. My dad and I are the ones who mow a lot of the ditches in the neighborhood. So that wouldn't fly for organic because they'd be too close to some places where they spray. Granted, I can tell, it's pretty easy to tell if someone's drifted or not because the weeds would curl. So I mean, it's like if I've seen that, it's just like we don't cut it. Some of that stuff is easy to see. So yeah, I can't call my beef certified organic, but I eat very well, I'll tell you that.
So I think I'm gonna ask some questions of the interns now. You have a reflection question each week, and this week's question is to talk with your host farmer about whether or not they are or are not certified organic and their reasons for that. If they're not, is it something that they're interested in or working on? Or maybe it's a choice that they've made to be or not to be. But I'm curious if any of you know already if your host farmer is certified organic.
My host farm is not currently, though they do try to adhere to organic, I guess, principles as much as possible. But the actual crop production on this property is small, and there's more of a focus on caring for animals which are not raised for meat. So that's where more of the focus goes. I have actually been talking to my aunt, who's the owner of the farm, about if that would be an interest if the crop production was upscaled, though.
Great. And I think one thing you may read in the homework and things, if a crop farm's sales are less than $5,000 per year and they're using organic practices, they are allowed to use the title without going through the paperwork and the payments to get the organic certification. But as long as it's under 5,000 a year.
Oh, I actually have a question. I don't know if this was mentioned already, then I apologize for missing it. How much of a workload is like going through the paperwork and documentation and things like that to certify organic?
The first year is a lot of work. Now also depending on how many crops are you certifying. So because I have like over a dozen in this grant, it takes me a while. It's on software. It used to be all Word documents. I can't remember how many hours it took me. The first time I did it, I think I spent a solid 7 hours doing it. After I get in tonight, I need to update some things. And so I'll go through the list. I expect to spend at least an hour sometime after dark trying to update some things because I have a file due on Monday. Because basically I have, list of seed sources, what's going in each field. Are you using, an added substance? For example, I'm using GSR calcium and organic calcium. I have to list, here's where they're from, here's the proof that they're organic. That's time consuming. So there's a lot of scanning or downloading the certificate and getting that uploaded. So I mean, if you do just one thing, it's gonna be pretty easy. But because I have a bunch of things on my plate or that I grow, it's more time consuming because of that.
Mm-hmm.
So the first time it's going to be time consuming, just FYI.
What about the when the certifier comes out or the inspector? Sorry, is that scary or?
No, it hasn't been.
Okay.
like an hour. And I got a new inspector last year. He had more questions about curiosity than anything. So I mean, it was really, nonchalant.
Okay.
Because it was a learning process for him, and because it's a new position for him too. Now, I'll say it was a more seasoned inspector. The first inspector I had, he was very well experienced. So he was part of an organic inspection back when, like Stephanie mentioned, different certifiers had different rules. They wouldn't accept each other's certification. So, and then, USDA said, no, this is going to be, all of you will adhere to this. So he had the transition from where one certifier wouldn't accept each other's, rules to where, okay, USDA says you all do this. So that's, but he also transitioned from pen and paper to software, which was a little bit difficult for him. But I really liked working with him because he understood it. He was a farmer himself, so he understood that. That I appreciated. So I mean, give you an exception to the rule. If there's a variety you really like and you can't get it organic, doesn't mean you can't plant it. You can, if as long as it's non-GMO and you can prove that, you know what, they're out, I can't get it, you can grow that. Or if you're growing a variety that's on conventional ground, there's a process to get that when you grow it for seed again that can be considered organic. GMO is off the table. That's out of the question. But there are a few exceptions to the rule for sourcing seeds, which is a big deal. And the thing is, like, okay, Forrest, you're in the Minot area. Risto, you're up by Grand Forks. There are seed companies can say they have growers. It's like this one grower said, this is the best lettuce I've ever grown, and they're in Virginia. And then talk to someone in Washington, and they'll say this is the worst variety I've ever grown. So, local environments influence that. And that's something to consider no matter what you're growing, even if it's just for feed. I'm partial to Algonquin alfalfa. And ironically, that old public variety was more expensive than a lot of stuff. So I'm going to try harvesting it this year for seed. Like, I'd be damned if I'm going to buy seed again.
Well, we have only 4 minutes left, and I want to make sure we cover some housekeeping items as well. Thank you so much, Glenn. I have put Glenn's email address in your portal. So if you have further questions,
Sure.
Interns may reach out to you, Glenn.
Please do. I'll get back to you after dark. That's normal.
Okay.
All right. I'll sign off then for housekeeping. So.
All right. Thanks so much.
Nice meeting you all.
Thank
Shoot
you.
me an email if you have questions.
So this is a time card week, and I think you all responded to my email. I believe I have time cards from everyone who is here today. So thank you so much, and thanks for bearing with us through the portal difficulties, but it worked out. And then some of you have submitted your weekly experience report, and some of you have not. Thank you to those that have. If you haven't submitted yet, please do complete that experience report and send it in. Learning plans. Now, has Felicity talked with you about the learning plan already?
A bit.
A bit. Okay, I will go through it really quickly. Shoot. I should have had it pulled up. So you have two different conversations to have with your host farmer. Most of you have already had the communications and expectations conversation, which was the very beginning of the internship. That's like a typical onboarding you would do for any job. The second conversation is the learning plan template. And we found it's better to wait until you've been in the internship for a few weeks. You've kind of become familiar with the day-to-day work in the farm, and you're starting to have some ideas about what you might want to do for an independent project. Here we go. So the learning plan template, I emailed out to you today, and I will also make sure it's in the portal. So hopefully you are having a weekly sit down with your host farmer just to ask questions, to discuss the reflection question. So that would be a good time to talk about, you know, what do you want to get out of this internship? Are there specific things that you really want to learn and study? I hope they should be, oh, they are. I've seen your experience reports. They're including you in the day-to-day aspects of the farm, the weeding, shearing sheep, feeding and watering. And those are great. That's the foundation of your internship. But we also want you to have the opportunity to go beyond the day-to-day and pick some topics that are of interest to you to really dig into. Risto, I'm going to pick on you for a second. I know that you've really dug into a project of riverponics raft. That's a fascinating, unique project, and that's a great example of an independent project. We've had other interns who set up worm bins, worm composting systems, or it can be as simple as the host farmer just giving you a little plot in the garden for you to have as your own, you know, to try out some new varieties or try some different production methods. Last year, Gretchen at Stable Days built a chicken tractor. So it's something for you to sink your teeth into, exercise your problem solving abilities, develop some soft skills, and really just have a project that you can really take ownership of. So the learning plan includes, we do have a farming skills competency list if you're needing help thinking about what areas you want to focus on or to just generate some ideas. So here's an example. This is a theoretical intern who wanted to learn about soil management. And so their first competency was they wanted to understand soil testing. And so the activities were to read about soil testing, choose a testing method, test 3 plots, record what they learned, and discuss with their mentor what amendments the soil needs. Or fundamentals of composting. Identify, you know, goal to identify the best compost method for the farm. So you've got, on the template, you've got space for 3 learning goals, and one of those should be your independent project. And it can be as in-depth or not as you are comfortable with. But this is your opportunity to dive into something that fascinates you. So you'll complete this with the host farmer, and then we will ask you to turn it in to Felicity or me if you finished it before Felicity's back, just so that we can see what you're working on and help provide any guidance. I think Felicity may have told you also that sometimes you'll need supplies for the independent project, and so we will reimburse supplies up to, I need to double check. I think it was $100.
Yeah, it's
Okay.
100.
Yep, and you can include that on your time card in the expense section. Any questions? Aside, oh, go ahead.
By what day should we kind of have a handle on like the independent project and learning plan?
How about by next time card? So that would be 2 weeks from 2 weeks from yesterday, basically. So if you've got it sooner, that's great. But I figured 2 weeks should be a good amount of time.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. And if you are mulling over ideas or you need help, you know, you want to talk it through, I am happy to have a conversation. You can reach out. You've all got my email address, and I think my phone number is on there as well. So we just want you to have a great experience in your internship. So we're 4 minutes over really quickly. We have a webinar tomorrow on food safety. A lot of you are working at farmers market with your host farmer this summer. So that food safety webinar will be really helpful because you'll be handling food when you vend at farmers market. The information is in the portal. I know a couple of you have already registered for that. So thank you so much. That is from noon to 1 tomorrow. And that's a webinar on food safety. And our next field day is going to be July 11th. We're going to be going to Minokan Farm near Bismarck. And there will be more information coming about that. Any last questions before we adjourn?
I was wondering about the other field days, when those are, when all of them are, so I can plan ahead for it.
Absolutely. So I'll make sure they're in the portal, but really quickly, August 14th in Minot.
Okay.
September 14th in Fargo.
Okay. I'll try to make it to them.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, thank you, everyone. Thanks for a great class. And Shelby, we will be with you next week. And have a great week.